there's a nasty new invader plaguing the waters of Waikiki. This invader is smothering the coral reefs, and it's happening right here and right now. And that invader is a gorilla. Gorilla ogo, a seaweed that forms a mat over the reef, killing the native coral. The result? A depleted ecosystem that threatens Hawaii's rich undersea life, from our colorful corals to the many species of fish and invertebrates found nowhere else in the world. But there is hope for our reefs.
From the depths of the sea to the island mountaintops, Hawaiians carved these islands into land divisions called ahupua'a, each with all they needed to thrive. Let's explore the ocean reef section of an ahupua'a and find out what we can all do to help preserve Hawaii's environment.
Aloha, I'm Dr. Dan Rubinoff of the University of Hawaii Manoa, and I'm here with my colleague, Dr. Allison Sherwood, to talk a little bit about gorilla ogo. So this gorilla ogo is actually a big deal, isn't it?
It is, Dan. It's a really big deal because the coral reef is actually a living organism. It's made up of many small animals living together in a reef structure.
It seems like stone when you see it, but it isn't, right?
It isn't stone. It is really a living organism, and the organism has a hard shell that it has around it. And all these organisms living very closely together make what we see as the reef structure, the coral reef. Lots of other things live on the reef too, though. There are lots of different seaweed species and, of course, fish that we see around there as well.
So what's the big deal about gorilla ogo? What kind of damage does this cause?
This is a species that doesn't belong in Hawaii. It arrived here probably in the 1970s on the island of Oahu, earlier than that in other places in the Hawaiian Islands, maybe from the Philippines. Some things do eat it, but it's not as palatable, it's not as tasty as a lot of the native species, the things that really do belong on our coral reefs. And so it's taking out the habitat, it's taking up the space where things that should be here should be living, and it's also not as tasty to the things that should be eating seaweeds in the coral reef ecosystem.
And that's one of the biggest deal about coral, isn't it? Not just the coral itself, but the animals and plants that it supports, right?
Exactly. The coral reef is an amazing ecosystem. It supports a really wide diversity of plants and animals in the ocean, so it's a very important habitat.
In fact, I've heard it said that tropical oceans are essentially deserts with little oases of coral reef where most of the life occurs. So what can we do about it? How do we stop it?
This is a tricky invader to control. This is an alga that fragments so easily, and every small little fragment of this is capable of growing into a whole new plant. So really the answer is to try to prevent breaking this up and spreading it as much as possible. So if you're out enjoying the coral reef, if you're out snorkeling or diving, make sure that you don't have bits of algae trapped into your gear. Make sure that everything is cleaned off really well before you move on to a new location.
So what are some of the things that people can do to save the reef, or some of the bad things that we can try to stop doing?
Don't walk on the reef. You can kill the coral animals that build the reef and ultimately destroy it. Don't dump fish and plants into the ocean or any body of water. Don't feed the fish. They have a specific diet that helps them fit in with their environment. Never harass fish. Let them come to you. Never take or pick coral. Don't throw litter into the water. Plastic bags look like jellyfish, and turtles and other sea creatures may eat them and get sick. Sterilize and thoroughly clean your diving equipment between dives. It will help stop the spread of invasive species from one area to another. Don't drag kayaks or surfboards over reefs. You're damaging the homes of thousands of creatures when you do this.
So gorilla ogo hasn't spread everywhere, and this battle between the gorilla ogo and the coral reefs isn't a done deal, is it?
You're right, Dan. There's still a chance for all of us to feel like we can make a difference.
So by following the simple recommendations that we talked about here today, each and every one of us can do our part to help protect and save Hawaii's beautiful and fragile natural environment. Allison, thank you for joining me.
It was my pleasure, Dan.
Thank you for watching. Aloha.
Aloha.
To learn more about these unique islands and what you can do to protect them, visit hawaiistateparks.org.